The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jacob Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's the Hanson Scotty Day of Adoption. We're here at the Humane Society of Utah, 4242 South, 300 West. Come adopt a pet, just $12.80, and you will take home a new member of the family. 4242 South, 300 West. Joining the show now, of course, my co-host for Jazz pre, half, and post-game coverage. He has done many a draft show with us, Ben. However, this year, doing Utah Jazz online, doing a little TV stuff. By the way, the great Amy Donaldson just walked through the door. Hey,
superstar, brought her puppy.
Absolutely animal person herself. But joining us now, of course, the coach, Tim LaComb. What's going on, Coach?
Hey guys, you just hanging out with a bunch of animals, huh?
Legends? Oh my gosh, I scared the dog. That's okay. Hi, puppy. Oh, it's not into me right now.
That's all right.
I stopped in last year on the day of adoption with Hanson Scotty, and so I got to see that place. It's awesome. What a cool day. And if you guys notice the statue or sculpture out front, that's my father-in-law's work. So check that out as you go in and out.
Yeah, that's way cool.
All right, well, the draft is tomorrow. I know you've done your prep. As you said, you're working with the Utah Jazz tomorrow and some of their coverage, so very excited for that. Where are you on this draft? What are your kind of consensus or general takeaways before we get into some more specifics?
Well, like anything else, didn't rely on everybody else's opinion, kind of dove into it. But I would definitely agree that this draft is a little lower watermark than we've seen. However, I do think there are some really unique talents, some guys that do things really well. I got into the habit the last couple of days, and I heard Justin Zanuck talk about it too. These are, for all intents and purposes, the 60 best qualified, or 75, however you want to look at it with free agents and everything else. But the best possible guys, to come into the league this year. But it seems like for the last, 6-8 weeks, all I've done is pick apart their game and, look at things that they struggle with. But everybody understands the NBA is a developmental league. You've got to have certain tools. But that's the thing I've fought the last little while, is just trying to find things that guys do well and not necessarily just focus on the things they can't do.
What are the odds in your mind? And obviously this is sheer speculation, but what are the odds they make all three picks?
I don't think there would be much chance at all. I would put that in I'd say maybe 20%. I think they're going to try to move those two later picks into something in the teens, or if they were able to, work a deal with somebody, perhaps even move up to try to get somebody, as a lock that they want to get. But I do not expect them to take all three picks.
I think one of what I've taken away from watching all these guys, especially in the top 10 versus most years, is that everyone has kind of a major thing they've got to fix. And I won't include the top 2 or 3 players in this conversation, but really right around where the Jazz are picking. All these guys that have been consistently in the conversation have like a major thing that they need to fix in their game. But if they do, they really do have a chance to be a very good top 10 pick. So of things that need to be fixed, and I'm just talking in general, I'm not talking about these players specifically, what do you feel like you can fix for a player coming out of college before they get to the NBA, whether it's defense, shooting, ball handling, those types of skills?
Well, I think, you take most guys from whatever our youngest guys are 18 up to, 23, 24 in this draft. Guys are going to have things that they don't, do well. It's just the nature of it. But I would say that, there used to be the book that you can't teach a guy to shoot. And I think that's probably, in some respects, you got to really look at mechanics. And there's a big difference between guys just missing shots and guys, who have real flaws. in their mechanics. So I still am a believer that you can improve a guy's shooting, but you can't, in my mind, you can't take a guy who's not a great shooter and make him a knockdown shooter. I mean, I just think that that's difficult. We've seen instances, like a Kawhi Leonard who could not shoot at all coming out of college from three, but just didn't really shoot that shot, didn't have the reps, was almost like he was playing on an 8-foot hoop as a bigger guy because he just thrived in the mid-range and at the basket. So that three-point shot for him came later. I do think the things you can really hone in on are defensive understanding. I think guys pick up a ton of defensive understanding, and just like offense, defense, the spacing of it, the discipline of knowing when to help and when to stay home. All those things I think are guys take a big step once they get into the league. And then, just general, I would say ball screen understanding, spacing understanding. Those things are things that come. But really what you're looking for is a dynamic player who can do, a couple of different things really, really well.
So, Coach, doing draft night with you, you always come with a couple of guys, and it's usually it's more than a couple actually, but it's usually sprinkled through the draft. Just a few names that have particularly caught your eye, and you've been pretty good on your hit rate on those. So, I'm not asking you to give up all of them. Save something, of course, for the draft night broadcast, but give us a couple of those names that you like.
Absolutely, I think in the top 10, two guys that I've studied the film on answer a lot of questions, and I think Klingon is one. I think if I had the first pick in this draft, I'd probably draft him. He's just a guy who will play in this league for a long time. Actually reminds me a lot in his ability to affect the rim like Rudy, but has a lot more offensive upside. So I like him a lot. I'm in love with Stephon Castle's game. And he's one of those guys, Ben, you talk about that has not shot the ball, percentage-wise well. But I think watching his stroke, I think he's a guy who can become a better shooter. Those two guys stand out to me in that first 10. I'm intrigued also by Topic, who, at one point was listed in the top 3 or 4. Obviously had that ACL tear, but will be a guy that drops a little bit based on the injury. So I'm intrigued by him. He has I would say a unbelievably great understanding of how to play in pick and roll, master's degree level, and sees everything. He's an A to E guy. You can see every guy on the floor. So I'm impressed with him. The other one that stands out, a couple other guys that stand out to me, I like Devin Carter out of Providence. I think he fits in need. He's a bulldog. He's an older guy, but guards his yard and is capable of getting in, creating and making his own plays. Outside of that, I am really high on Ryan Dunn from Virginia. He reminds me of Herb Jones. I feel like Herb Jones is a guy that I fell in love with. You'll remember that, Jake, back in the day. And I just think he's a guy that you can put on any roster and he can be effective. I am really intrigued to see what happens with Zach Edey. I think Zach Edey is going to go way higher than people think. Just a sampling of conversations I've had with people around the league, his name comes up, and he's really wowed people with his attitude, with his perseverance, with his toughness. And, everybody says he can't, but like I just said, that's what everybody does during this week. I'm intrigued to see. I'm not ready to make a statement one way or the other because I don't really know what he can be in this league. But I do think, he's going to go higher than projected, would be my guess. So that's kind of actually, let me throw one more at you. Guy that I think will stick in the league. He's a little guard, but reminds me of Van Vliet a little bit. KJ Simpson out of Colorado. I really like him.
Yeah, the Colorado kids can all play. Cody Williams, obviously the biggest question mark there just because he's so young. But Tristan DeSilva is going to be really good, probably goes higher than a lot of people think as well. And I'm with you on KJ Simpson. I think he's excellent. Yeah, I'm curious about Edey. I watched him again last week, and then I did my mock yesterday just to kind of do the process of what it's like to how guys fall. How if this guy goes here, the board falls. What is interesting to me and why Edey might go so high is there's a lot of teams who actually need big guys, and there are so few big guys after Alexander Sarr and Donovan Clingan go off the board. Like, it is a huge gap before you get to the next, like, real, true big guy who I think is probably worthy of consideration in the lottery, which is why a player like Zach Edey or Deron Holmes or Khalil Ware might jump up much higher than anyone's expecting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if they're going to jump up, I think Edey, his lineage, the last 2 years being a player of the year, what he did at Purdue, he's just kind of taken doubters. I was a huge doubter. I was a guy who thought, can this really translate? And I don't know really if it can beyond 10, 15 minutes a game. But, man, he seems to be gaining momentum. I read something yesterday that, wouldn't be surprising to see him taken as high as 7. And if that were to happen, that's a good thing for the Jazz in some respects because it pushes guys down, as you said, a little bit based on that. I do get a kick out of the pundits, and Jake and I laugh about this every year. Guys just kind of get stuck in spots. And, Sarr and Reese Shea have been the two names at the top. I think Sarr is a lock to Washington from everything I can see. But I still believe there might be something happening at 1. I watch Reese Shea play. I really like what I see. But, if you're taking the number 1 pick, those butts become bigger. And I've never seen a guy taken at 1 that would have more question marks.
Now, Coach, you spend a long time climbing the ranks in the coaching industry, and I think you are one heck of a broadcaster. So who knew that the shortcut to being the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers would be buying a bunch of wine and doing a podcast with LeBron?
Well, and making a ton of shots as a player, right? Beyond that, I saw he coached like a fourth-grade team. Color me very, very intrigued by all of this. Boy,
those boys played hard, though, Tim.
They really did. I mean, I've never seen a fourth-grade team get after it defensively like that. The way they shut down gaps and crowded the post was really impressive. I just think on the outset, this looks like fail hard. This looks like really fail hard. But we've been surprised before. JJ Redick, don't know the dude, but I know he's about as headstrong as anybody you'd ever meet. He's got his work cut out for him, not just, trying to figure out LeBron and Bronny and how that's all going to work, but, just generally the firestorm and the dumpster fire in a lot of ways that is the Los Angeles Lakers. He's got a lot of work to do to get that thing, functioning.
It's pretty funny to look back. I've got his basketball reference page pulled up right now, JJ Redick. He played 4 years at Duke. Now, he was young. He was 21 when he was coming out of college, so he was a younger 4-year player compared to a lot of these guys who were 22, 23 at that age. He averaged 27 points a game as a senior. He shot 47% from the floor and 42% from three. Like, absolute, no doubt NBA player, especially in retrospect. Like, he would still be a lottery pick. He went 11 overall. We're talking about Reed Shepherd, who shot the heck out of the ball as well. Now, he's much better with the ball in his hands than J.J. Redick was, but pretty similar shooting numbers. Reed was actually better. I look at guys like that, and I just think, yeah, shot makers stick. And if you were to go back and redo the 2006 NBA draft, I know a lot of people thought J.J. was a reach at 11, but absolutely he would be a top 10 pick. Do we just overlook that sometimes, that if you make shots, you're going to stick in the NBA, and that is still the ultimate goal of the league, is to put the ball in the basket?
I think that is prereq one. I mean, obviously that's where all the question marks start coming in when a guy can't necessarily be a knockdown shooter. I think in the case of Reed Shepherd, he can make shots, but I really worry about his size and ability to function outside of just shooting the basketball. I know the kid's numbers are off the chart, but he's just so little in a game that seems to be getting bigger by the year. So I'm going to put a pin in that one. I'm not, I would be very, very hesitant to take him as high as 3, but maybe history is, as you said with Redick, if you can shoot, it makes sense. I just worry about that dude's size.
What did you think about the Cavs hiring Kenny Atkinson?
Solid hire. I think Atkinson's definitely, he knows the league. I was hoping for Johnny Bryant there. I know he was involved. But I think the way the league goes, they recycle old guys that have been around a long time, and so that makes sense.
Coach, you were the best. Thank you, as always, for jumping on. I'm sure you guys are going to kill it on your draft coverage, and can't wait to catch up with you.
Well, I'll be with Locke and Mike.
So you won't have to talk.
No, I was just going to say I'll be with Locke and Mike and Thurl and Bowler. So, I'm going to treat words like, very, very special, because I don't know that I'll get a ton of them.
Well, Mike has 3/4 of these guys on speed dial, so it'll be an insightful show.
I was talking to Gary Castle, Steph's dad, last week. He and I played golf together in a Pro-Am.
Mike knows everybody.
Mike does know everybody.
And you know what? Mike should. Mike's a man of the people, and I love Mike.
Thank you, Coach. You're the best.
See you guys.
There you go, the one and only Tim LaComb. We'll have more for you coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Take it in 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We are live from the Humane Society of Utah. It's Hans and Scotty's Day of Adoption. Just $12.80, and you can take home a new member of the family. Dog, cat, puppy, kitten, rabbits, all sorts of stuff. Come down and adopt a new member of the family.
We talk a lot about the 2013 NBA draft and how similar this one is to that, where Anthony Bennett went number 1 overall. I don't think this is going to be that type of surprise. I do think we have a general sense of 2 or 3 names that are going to be the top draft or the top player drafted. This is really similar to 2006 as I'm looking back, because we were talking about JJ Redick, and I pulled up this draft. Andrea Bargnani, number 1 overall.
Yeah,
a horrendous pick.
Draft, yep.
LaMarcus Aldridge, 2, very good. One of the rare situations where number 2 is significantly better. It happens. We've seen Kevin Durant.
And Portland actually made a good pick there.
They made a good pick there. Well, actually, that was from Chicago, and then Chicago traded it to Portland.
Oh, okay. 2 of the yeah.
Adam Morrison, 3. Tyrus Thomas, 4. Sheldon Williams, 5. Just 4 of the 5, I think, could legitimately be considered busts.
Isn't Sheldon Williams more famous for his spouse?
Yeah, he was married to...
Is it Candace Parker?
Candace Parker for a while. No longer.
I actually think she's really good.
As a broadcaster?
As a broadcaster.
Absolutely,
I think,
she's excellent.
Like, Doris gets a lot of run. I think Candace is really good. She's not afraid to say stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? All right, anyway, I didn't mean to get you derailed.
Brandon Roy, coming in at number 6.
Okay.
Randy Foy, former Jazzman, 7. Rudy Gay, number 8. Actually the second leading scorer from this class all time. Patrick O'Brien, 9. Sayer Sene, 10, played 47 total games. And then JJ Redick comes in at 11. It's just, that's a horrible draft. And very realistically, I think we could be looking at a draft like this coming up this season, where 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now. Now, I do think scouting's a lot better. I do think there's so many more international players. The talent is better. We're certainly not reaching on international players, I think, the way we used to, in this sense, where everyone was looking for the next Dirk Nowitzki and was hoping that the more mystery meant the higher their upside was. We don't do that as much. But a couple of years from now, if we look back and say, man, LaMarcus Aldridge was an all-star. Actually, Paul Millsap was in this draft, ended up being like maybe the 3rd best player from this draft, made several all-star games. We could be looking at that.
But maybe, yeah, and probably, I should say. But, God, I just don't. The contrarian in me doesn't want to trust the narrative.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, so Gavoni doesn't think it's a very good draft. What does that clown know? I'm with Zanuck, and this, I guess, is an obvious take, but I'm with Zanuck. Listen, maybe it's a little harder to find, but there are dudes in this draft.
Everywhere.
I mean, you just mentioned Millsap,
Yep.
Aldridge, and even Rudy Gay. I know we didn't see the best Rudy Gay when he was here, but he was really good in the league for a long time. Like, if the Jazz could find a Rudy Gay level player at 10, they'd be fired up. Like, you can find dudes. If they found LaMarcus Aldridge was an all-NBA guy.
Rajon Rondo went number 21 in that draft. Rajon Rondo was the
Put Boston over the top for the title.
Right. So you're right. Absolutely. You've got to find the guys. You've got to know what you're looking for. You've got to know what your culture is, and you've got to have success there.
I feel like all we do when we say this is going to be a bad draft is give bad GMs passes for making bad draft picks.
I think that's fair.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, somebody's going to totally Anthony Bennett it and then go, well, what did you want me to do? It was a flat draft. It wasn't that good. I feel like we're just giving cover to people whose job it is to find the player. There's a player. There's players in this draft. And you have to go find them, find where they're going to go, do a little, clandestine behavior because you don't want anybody else to take them, and that's why the draft's all weird. But let's not remove responsibility from the people whose job it is to – we talked about this yesterday, Ben, how there's no unimportant drafts. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Even if you don't have a good pick, you can still do something or still draft a player or still flip it for a guy or kick it down to next year or whatever. It's all important. And I feel like when we just wad up drafts and throw them into the garbage and say, oh, they suck, all we're doing is giving everybody a pass for making stupid decisions.
Yep. And look, Rajon Rondo, I mean, ironically, two of the players we talked about in this 2006 draft, Rajon Rondo and Paul Millsap, had two somewhat significant fatal flaws going into the draft, is that neither of them could shoot. That was just kind of the belief. You know, Paul Millsap was the best rebounder in college basketball. Rajon Rondo was obviously a very natural ball handler and assist guy, but didn't have a lot of offense as far as scoring the ball. And Paul Millsap turned into a very dynamic scorer and one of the more important stretch bigs of that early era when that really started to come to fruition in the NBA, and Mike Budenholzer and the Hawks were so important in that. But Rajon Rondo, who really still never figured out how to score, had this other thing that Danny Ainge recognized in that pre-draft process because they traded for him from Phoenix on draft night. That's what you got to do. You got to find the guys who can channel kind of that other hard-to-define element of the game where they can grow and will build and can fit in and can be a part of a team that impacts winning, not just can score, not just can do the kind of the obvious things that you can see on paper, but does the more difficult things. And that's the job, and that's what you've got to pick on, and that's what you've got to find. And that's where you hope, I think, Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck have a little bit extra experience.
Ironically enough, one of those guys, Millsap, learned to shoot and had an above-average NBA career for a long time. The other one did not and ended up bouncing around until he washed out. And that's the time, that time, what did you say, 2006?
Yep.
You didn't have to shoot to be an NBA player.
No, you didn't.
And now you do. And Paul learned that lesson, and Rajon Rondo did not. You know who also did not learn that lesson? Ty Corbin. And no, I'm not just trying to beat up on Ty here.
No, you're
but
right.
Like Paul Millsap said after he left, he said, man, I bugged Coach all the time. Let me go take some threes. Let me show you how I can shoot, on and on. And Ty Corbin, and Jerry Sloan too, throw Jerry in there too, said, no, you're a big. Paul, you're a big. We drafted you as a big. Go out and rebound. Go out and back up Carlos Boozer. And Paul's like, no, dude, I can shoot.
There's more to my game here.
And then he goes to Atlanta and he blows up because the Budenholzer let the leash off, so to speak. And he ended up having a really amazing second chapter to his career because his first chapter was great. Mm-hmm. He was an impact player on some really good Jazz teams. And the second chapter was probably even better with the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, with an all-star berth, certainly. So, I don't know. The evolution of the game is interesting, and those who buy in and jump on board and those that do not. Like Ben Simmons, for example.
Yeah. And, I don't think anyone drafted Paul Millsap saying, you know what, I think in 7 years he's going to be a 38% three-point shooter. Yeah. But part of that is recognizing where the game is headed. And you may have said –
But that's San Antonio. I mean, nobody thought Kawhi was that, and San Antonio absolutely did.
Correct. You've got to understand that maybe in 5 years the league will evolve enough that this guy who isn't quite where they're supposed to be today or what is happening with the championship teams today might age into that in 5 years, or the league will change to better suit them. And I think that happens a lot more than we recognize.
If the Jazz were to draft purely on position, what do you think they'd take?
Probably a wing, probably one of the bigger wings. And there's again, the nice thing about this draft, and you've just got to find the right guy, but between Cody Williams, who we talked about from Colorado, Modest Buzelis and Ron Holland, who were both at the G League Ignite last year. There are players right in that range that are, Dalton Connect from Tennessee is in the same conversation as well. 6'6" to 6'8", 6'9", that can kind of have the ball in their hands a little bit, but are these big, rangy wings that the league is really trending towards. You've just got to you got to pick the right one. And you got to hope that they're available at 10.
No, I'm not taking anybody from G League Ignite.
It is such a sloppy, weird thing.
Well, listen, I for years kind of have been on the side of college basketball and how exposure and playing on the big stage and all those sorts of things, fighting against the David Locks of the world who tell you that college basketball is a waste of time and the way that they play doesn't apply and you don't develop. And everybody said, go to the G League, you get NBA coaching and all this and that. I think it actually stunts you because you just get dunked on. You look at G League Ignite, they're terrible. Like when they competing in the G League, they're not good, and they just get creamed. I don't know if they do and you're the one who pointed out this theory to me, so I give you all the credit. It's taken these G League Ignite guys like 3 seasons to even be able to be suitable NBA players.
It's a really weird dynamic to put guys in a spot where you don't care about winning. Like, it's just a weird way to ask guys to develop and when you don't ask them to win, because you have to operate as a team to win. So when you take out winning, you give guys a green light to operate not as a team. You give them a green light to operate as individuals. And it's like, well, that's not going to be what happens in the NBA at all. So you've got to unlearn that individual mindset. You've got to learn how to play as a team again, and you're going to be used completely different. Like, the G League Ignite this year didn't have a point guard on their team. So they have Ron Holland, who played power forward in high school. They had him play ball in hand, like shooting guard, small forward, like true wing stuff. But as like the offensive initiator, it's like that's not who he's ever been, and it's not who he's going to be at least early in his NBA career. So what you've done is wasted a year of his development doing something that is so bizarre and so unique that is not who he is as a player, where if you had allowed him to play off the ball, give a point guard an opportunity to make decisions for him so he understands why the game is played a certain way, he would have been far better, and you would have had a better understanding of who he is as a player, not all these things that he's not. What he got a real strong display of at the G League Ignite, and same with Modest Buzelis, is all these things that they can't do. It's like, that's not the best way for a coach to use them. It's just, it was awkward. It was really bad, and I didn't like watching their games at all, and you've got to project through that. That is the difficult part. What did he do that you like that you think you can fix and get him to buy into?
We'll wrap up the show. Coming up next, it's Jake and Ben, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody! Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Two niggas on the airways, talking sports. They got him Matrix and also loves his tie-dye. Ben's got style with his scarf. Oh my.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach Doors and Windows, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows. Ben, we're live here at the Humane Society of Utah, the Hanson Scotty Adoption Event. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But you want to talk a little puck?
As I think we all predicted, the second you kind of started to hear what this Alex Meruelo guy was about in Arizona, who formerly owned the Coyotes and sold the team, really had the team taken from him.
He got Frank McCorded.
Yeah, they just said, like, you can't own this team anymore. Gary Bettman in the NHL came in and basically said, like, you got to sell this team. No one has any faith in you. He was going to bid on the land coming up on the 27th.
In Scottsdale?
In Scottsdale.
Yeah.
They ended up canceling the auction overall because it wasn't even zoned to have an NHL arena. It was zoned to have a Little League arena. Yesterday, officially, Alex Meruelo told everyone with the Coyotes he's not going to pursue bringing the team back.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, it's just like, and we have known this for 3 months now. Really, when Ryan got involved, and you could tell how excited Gary Bettman was to have Ryan Smith, like an actual human being, trying to buy this hockey team, as opposed to this psycho and Alex Meruelo in Arizona trying to figure this out. I'm glad this is over for the people of Arizona. I don't know how quickly they get a team back. And this is the danger of having bad ownership in sports and how badly they can mangle these issues.
I bet they get a team back. They'll find a new person. I mean, Phoenix is a big market.
It will be funny how quickly land opens up for a hockey arena if, like Matt Ishbia, wants to build the team. wants to buy a team and put it there.
I think this guy's a huge bozo, obviously, but I'm not convinced that was their only problem down there. So I don't know if they get another franchise. I'm not convinced it'll automatically be a success. But I
agree.
do think that they will try and go back to Phoenix.
I think they will try and get back down there. I won't be surprised if it takes a decade. But also, you know what? You run into roadblocks, and you've got to have problem solvers. And I will credit the Jazz and the Smith Entertainment Group. They have been problem solvers along the way. They figured out how to get the team ready to play this year. They've gotten all the uniform stuff ready to go. They found out how to get the players here. Like, they figured it out, and I'm sure there are more headaches than we even recognize.
Let me ask you this, Ben. Are you more of a problem solver or a problem creator?
Creator, big time. Yeah, love causing trouble, whether I mean to do it or not.
Oh, mine's completely unintentional, but yeah, I cause problems all the time. All right, Hanson, Scotty G are coming up next. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Draft day, 97.5,
Thanks, Christian.
the KSL Sports Zone.